Hey, welcome to Wine Talks here with Paul Kalemkiarian, and this episode brought to you by the Pure Wine Club series at the original Wine of the Month Club. Been curating wines for 48 years now, and we are happy to be part of that organization. Wine Talks is available on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and amongst your favorite hangouts for podcasting, and we are very excited today to have a very, very special guest. One of the great chefs of America and turned wine guy too, which is kind of exciting. And we have Joachim Splichal. So I wanted to say Joachim, right? Nobody's not pronounced the J?
No, that's fine. Joachim is fine.
Joachim.
The moment you don't tell me Joaquin.
Yeah. Well, we're in Southern California, right? I mean,
Yeah. Often I'm Joaquin or Joe Chin.
Yeah, Mr. That's San Marino.
That's San Marino, yeah.
Hey, it's great to have you, Joachim. It's an exciting and fun thing to do, and we, of course, love your wine. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But I was asked to say in the beginning, Nancy Silverton and Mike Krikorian say hi. That's what they told me to say.
Okay, great.
They're nice people.
They don't buy my wine, but
they
should.
At the store? Well, maybe they will now.
Yeah.
In fact, Mike owes me a favor, so I'll have to bring
Yeah, tell him.
Actually, he's... I hired him to document my dad's story.
Yeah.
And I was told by a very famous New York Times best-selling author, Frances Deaconspiel. She wrote about the wine business. Great book if you haven't read it, called Tangled Vines. Anyway, he's been interviewing my dad. She said, find an investigative reporter. That's the best kind of guy. And he's being Armenian, so he's been down at my dad's place in La Jolla, interviewing him, writing a book about this whole ascent of California wine in the 70s. But we're not here for that. We're here to talk about you. And I kind of, what I like to do on this thing is like just peel some stuff back. Go back and see what you were thinking when you were a kid. What were you doing wait a minute. Speichingen.
Yeah. Well, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, but you started there. No? Obviously,
I was born there, and my parents they had an old-fashioned inn and with rooms with about 18 rooms on top.
Really?
And so I grew up in this business. When travelers came in, I schlepped their baggage upstairs, showed them the room, and get the nickel, and helped in the kitchen get the nickel, and after school, I started to be apprentice in a restaurant, a very popular tourist restaurant, nothing fancy. After that, I went to a school in Switzerland, learned a little bit about languages, hotel business, and I ended up in Holland, where I had a girlfriend, and there I worked in in the front of the house of a hotel, and that lasted about 2 weeks. I said, I can't take that.
But you were doing that in your hometown, right?
Yeah, I was doing it, but then I just applied for a job in the kitchen. And then I started cooking, and I traveled around the world. I was in Canada, Israel, Sweden, Norway, and then I ended up in Switzerland, in all big hotels, with 60 chefs in the kitchen and all of that. And at the end, I wanted to go back to a restaurant, and I sent applications out all over France, 2- and 3-star restaurant, and I ended up in a small restaurant at the Côte d'Azur in Antibes called La Bonne Auberge, which was run by Joe Roston, and he had two stars. And there I met this young crazy chef. His name was Jacques Maximin. And Jacques Maximin was at that point the rising star in France. And so I worked there for a season. I went back to Switzerland because I love to ski. And so I went to St. Moritz, and then I get the phone call for him that he became the chef at the Hotel Negresco in Nice. The restaurant was called Chanticleer, which never had a star. So he was the chef. He hired me as a chef associé, and within 2 years we had 2 stars, and he was really my mentor who taught me, and he was recognized all over Europe, all over the world as the incredible, fantastic, was very innovative, very new, very different, and I was lucky to be one of the guys in the crew.
Well, it's kind of interesting because one of the questions I had about back when you when you grew up, was Germany the type of country back then where you chose a trade when you got out of school, or you
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like France where I'm going to be a baker, I'm going to be a cook, or
Yeah, that was exactly it.
What
You
you did.
you have to go through an apprenticeship. You go to school, 3-year apprenticeship, and you certain time of the year you spend in the restaurant or in the hotel, and a certain time of the year you spend in school.
wow. So that's interesting. So and you were fascinated by this in the beginning. You didn't like the front house. You thought
Yeah,
that
I hated
that
it.
wasn't going to work.
I
And you went
didn't-
back to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And something intrigued you back there. That was
Well, I always helped my father at home, and yeah, I was intrigued a little bit the first couple of years, but when I arrived in France, their food was so superior than where it was so superior than anybody I worked for, and there was this freshness, this newness. They pushed the menus to a limit. We had the sea right there. There was a lot of tradition of Provençal food in Nice, and I was just fascinating. And I hit it off in the right place with the right guy. Jacques Maximin was the guy.
he was happening at that time.
He was happening, and I at that point I was maybe a year and a quarter at the Hotel Negresco in Nice. He made me sous chef. Sous chef is the second person in charge. I was 23 years and a half at that point, and we had 60 chefs, and
Was that a problem in the kitchen with that? This young guy
Not-
comes in, year and a half, and
none of the French guys loved it. They say this German bastard, and it was pretty hard in the beginning till I was in charge of basically writing the schedule for. Yeah, I was the second guy in charge, so I wrote the schedule for all chefs, for the entire crew. And I knew all their girlfriends.
Oh.
So when they pissed me off, I made them work the moment the girlfriend was off.
okay, that's funny.
And then within 2 months, there was no more
No
problems.
more problems. Because you look, my daughter's a baker in New York. She works for Jonathan Beno. I think we talked about that before. But when she studied in France,
Yeah.
and she's talking about the back kitchens, and she's experiencing this now. I mean, what a political nightmare in a kitchen like that, particularly with 60 chefs. It must have been amazing. And you come from Germany, which I don't think traditionally has a cuisine of
Yeah.
any repute, right?
Yeah.
And you're making French food. They probably think you're nuts.
Well, I was hired.
Of course, the chef was running the show, right?
The chef was on the show. He thought that was good. There's a particular hierarchy how a kitchen is run, and I was very organized, and the guy was not organized. So I kept everything together. I organized all his travels. We went all over the world with him, cooked for prime ministers in England, went to New York, went to Saudi Arabia, did the circle of the first
That's
Formula One
fascinating.
race.
Wow.
And I speak a couple of languages, so I was basically the guy who gets everything organized, and he was the brilliant mind behind it.
But you were listening to this brilliant mind and
Yeah,
absorbing everything.
I took it all in.
The kitchen. My daughter's telling me these stories, and I just it's fascinating because I can imagine that the organized person, the guy that's under control, that the dynamic inside a kitchen like that is just so important to have somebody that's
Yeah, because it's very precise.
yes.
And then you do your preparation, then 12 o'clock hits. That's like the race starts,
Yeah.
right? So the orders come in, everything has to be timed, that everybody comes together with the hot food at the same time to pick up. It's huge organization.
Is this not a absolute profession of passion? Because let me just ask you, like back then, and whatever time that was, even as a sous chef, what was the pay like? No numbers, of course, but what was it for the time? Big money, or just like right now, it's not big money really.
As a matter of fact, I found the pay stop when I worked at La Bonne Auberge. I made $300 a month.
Oh, no.
I worked 14 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow.
And I got free food and free
Okay, well,
free
great.
lodging was great. Yeah.
But you have to love this to do it for $300 a month.
Well, it's it's like
14
everything
hours.
else. If you want to become an architect, you need to work for Frank Gehry, Foster,
True, right, that's true.
Renzo Piano. So I picked Jacques Maximin, and
Well,
I think I did pretty well afterwards.
yes. We'll get into some of those things in a minute, but it's more than that. And I watch, and I've been associated now with part of this industry at least a little bit. And I see that your 14-hour days, you don't sign up for 14-hour days. You do 14-hour days because that's what it takes to get the job done, right?
Yeah.
And you can't leave that kitchen until the next day's ready and all the rest going on.
Yeah.
And so that's just what you learn. You learn the discipline.
It's very disciplined, and in that type of kitchen, you prep everything for lunch. There's nothing pre-made. You prep everything again for the dinner time. There's not like you make a sauce for 5 days or make a soup for 3 days. Forget it.
I wish the restaurant I went to last night had that philosophy.
Yeah. So where did you go?
I'm not going to tell you 'cause
Okay.
I'll get in trouble. In fact, if he's listening, I'm still already in trouble anyway. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
He's a French chef, actually.
Okay.
But I've been reading in this book. I got this book. It's called Great French Restaurants, and it was written in 1978. So it was the Frère Trois Gros, and Bocuse, Chapelle, all those guys.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that if you go through that book, you can plot all the restaurants, which I did when we went to Lyon last time.
Yeah.
They're still open.
Yeah.
And they're still starred, and they still have family relations with the original chefs. And if you do that in Los Angeles, you don't get that anymore, right? All those restaurants are...
No,
they kind of come and go.
the pace is much faster. And normally, the norm is that 60 to 70 or 80% of the restaurant are gone in the first 5 years.
Yes, because of,
Because
a
of
lot of
location, undercapitalized, wrong menu, too expensive, attitude, service problems,
the regular stuff.
the regular stuff.
So one of the questions I had here was sort of when my daughter was going through pastry school, Alain de Cassa's pastry school, and the way they kept their kitchen. And then when she worked in the bakeries in Paris, the way they kept their kitchen.
Yeah.
And when she ended up in New York and she started, in New York, I guess, I don't know, maybe you can answer this question in LA. You don't interview for a job in this industry. You go work for a day for free. That's what happens in New York.
You do. It's called a stage.
A stage.
So you go there for a day, and at the end of the day, you're supposed to know if you like it. I find this nonsense because you go in, you basically have no contact to the crew, and then you think you're gonna like it. You see, in the old days, you go in, you applied for a job, you got the job, and that was it.
That was it.
And you stayed at least 6 months to a year. Otherwise, if you left early, you had a bad reputation, and then when a chef calls another chef, all of a sudden you don't get the right jobs anymore.
Yeah, that's. I understand that's a very important part of this business. But she was going into these kitchens of reputed restaurants in New York, and she'd leave in a few hours saying, she knows she's not supposed to do that, but she said they're dirty, and they're not. And she had this standard that she learned in France.
Yeah, no.
The French kitchen is
impeccable
all the time, right?
But you have a lot of, in New York. You have great chefs. And they keep their kitchens.
The right ones keep their
impeccable.
kitchens right. There was a restaurant in Lyon, Orsi, I think it was.
Orsi,
right?
2-star, yeah.
Two-star restaurant. We went to see it, and the chef came out and talked to him, and I asked, this is when I earlier in my French language career, but I asked to see the kitchen, and it was already closed. We were the last people out. And we walked into this kitchen, and they said it's 30 years old. You wouldn't have known. You would not have known.
Yeah.
Is that from the chef down? That's just the way it is?
That's the way it is.
And you don't, no way. And
if you go today to Patina in downtown, look at the kitchen, you think it's nearly new. It's 14 years old.
And how is that? That has not seemed to change since you were in the industry for so long. Where you worked in Nice, it was like that.
It was like this
And
all
then
over.
But how come in American kitchens you don't see that?
Well, in the best restaurant, you definitely see it because everything starts with cleanliness. How do you treat the product? How you store it? How it's respected? How it's put together? It's a process.
It's kind of I've come to this conclusion because you said 80% of the restaurants are out in 5 years, and I think a lot of that is because I'm sitting around with my friends, Michael here and I. We're going to start a chicken wing place. We're going to have a sports bar. We think this is a huge dream. We have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
We've never worked in the kitchen. We've never been trained. We didn't go to culinary school.
Yeah.
And we start this restaurant. We have almost, zero chance of making it because unless I'm absolutely lucky, I'm in the right place and the food is really good.
Well, I mean, if you do 5 different items and you do them well, and you have some sense of customer service, most likely you have that, you should succeed.
You should do something.
Yeah.
You should be able to make it.
And that your product you put out is unique and, maybe spicy, crispy, whatever it is.
Something.
But
something different.
But definitely you have a chance. But, in the old days, 10, 15, 20 years ago, a couple of doctors got together, everybody invested $50,000, and all of a sudden they had a restaurant, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That was a lot of that in the 80s and 90s,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then they would go out of business. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that a lot. So in this book I was talking about with the French chefs, they talked about Catherine de Medici that came from Italy.
Yeah.
And brought the chefs
Yes.
from Italy, and that the Italians basically taught the
Taught
French
the
how
French
to cook.
how to cook.
Now, is this a true story, right?
That's
This
a
is
true story, but don't tell it to the French.
But they all know her when I bring it up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
yeah.
important. But it's such a different cuisine, and so how does today's cuisine? I mean, the traditional French cuisine, which I love, is that still alive in America, or are we now using some nouvelle cuisine that's?
Well, Nouvelle Cuisine was in the 80s, but I think, French, Europe is very traditional. New York is very traditional. You have very good Italian restaurants, very good French restaurants, traditional French restaurants, bistros, great Greek restaurants, etc., because it's close to Europe. Here, it's all influenced by the East, which is China, Taiwan,
Yeah, right.
Japanese.
These different fusions.
It's totally fusion, and we also influenced a lot by Mexican food. In
That's
the area.
interesting.
But Mexican food, for example, now you have the basic Mexican food, and then you have broken Spanish. That's one of
Downtown.
That's downtown. That guy does incredible, upscale, sophisticated Mexican food.
They
And
brought in my daughter early on to fix their bread problem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is like when they first started because she was at Superba
Oh yeah.
baking there, and then the guy went to broken Spanish. He goes, "I got this problem. Can you come help me?" So
Yeah, that's
before
good.
before she went to New York. So that influence is important because one of the conversations we're going to have this about Provençal cooking as well as your wine business, but we don't have in California indigenous wine grapes that tell us what the foods are going to be like, because I firmly believe, and I think you obviously do too, that the wines of an area grow with the cuisine, and certainly that has a very important part of
Yeah.
most of Europe.
Yeah.
But America doesn't have any. We have Concord grapes. We can make wine out of that. So we have the opportunity, and the way Jacques Ladier put it was, we have the opportunity to start from scratch, to have this new world is exposed to us, new wines, new foods. But I love this idea that the California influence is certainly from the east and from the west,
Yeah.
and then from the south.
Yeah.
So you came to America. By your bio, it was like you had nothing in your pockets. I mean, that's what it sounded like. I didn't
Yeah,
write
no,
the
no.
story.
I didn't have anything. A couple of jeans, couple of knives,
But you were brought here
big
by
ideas.
you were brought by the chef that you were working for in Nice.
Yeah, after Negresco, I moved to Louis Houtier, who had a 3-star restaurant, and he got the consultancy with the Regency Club in Westwood. Regency Club was owned by David Murdoch, Dole Corporation.
Dole, yeah.
And they brought me in, and I worked there a couple of years, and kept all the members happy. Had top of the line members.
But how do you come into America, and you are given this job at the Regency Club? Sounds pretty official, and it's this very famous owner. How do you, like, in your brain decide, okay, here's what the cuisine's going to be like? Is it all up to you? Do you get to decide this is what we're making?
Yeah,
or-
they brought me in. I wrote the menus. I was 26 and a half at that point. I wrote the menus. I basically set the pace. I did the dinner menu, the breakfast menu, the lunch menu, and then the banquet menu. And I dealt with Arnold Schwarzenegger was a member. I think President, one or two presidents were members.
Wow.
Mr. Pinola from First Interstate Bank. I mean, they were all the big corporations like Northrop. Mr. Jones was a member.
Yeah, Northrop, yeah.
And we had tons of weddings and banquets, and the only thing they want that everything is from the best.
So pervade the best.
Yeah,
But you feel pressure as a chef at that age with this clientele saying, I want. How do you decide if it's French or American or? If
Yeah,
it's
but at
Italian?
that point, I brought 6 guys with me,
Oh,
so
yeah,
I had the
okay.
whole crew with me, and at that point, LA was controlled by mostly French restaurants, like L'Orangerie,
Yeah, L'Orangerie.
the restaurant,
Yeah.
Les Anges, Michael's. Michael's was the first American restaurant at that point.
Yeah.
And they loved French food, but it was too heavy, too old-fashioned. And what I brought the lightness of Mediterranean food to the private
From the
club.
Nice influence.
Yeah, before classic French food is a lot of cream and a lot of butter.
Yes.
I used a lot of olive oil.
Well, that's interesting because I made a roux the other day with olive oil and
Yeah.
flour instead of
Yeah.
butter.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, but still, it's a saucy. They're heavier foods, but it seems like the contemporary French cuisine has adapted.
Yeah, but roux is very old-fashioned
Yes.
in a sense. And then after the roux, basically you only used either vegetable juice or
vegetable
wine
broth, yeah.
reduced and put cream in it,
Yes.
and then butter.
Yeah,
And what we did,
and then a heart disease.
we took about a couple of thousand calories out. We took the juice of the vegetable, reduced it, added a little bit olive oil, so it was much more healthy
Yes.
and up to date.
So the cuisine then, this farm to table movement. I mean, it sounds to me already that you were trained under what might be considered farm to table, fresh food, fresh foods.
We were 100 yards away from the Mediterranean,
So it's like
and the fisherman every day came to the back door. Had at 5 o'clock in the morning, we can pick out the fish we wanted. Then we had a small truck. We went to the Gorsalea, which is the central market in Nice. And at 4 o'clock, we saw all the farmers who grow the zucchini flowers, the tomatoes, and we picked everything up. It was farm to
it's
table.
already farm to table.
Yeah.
And it had to be fresh because you didn't freeze anything. You didn't.
Yeah, it was all fresh.
You didn't pre-make anything.
And you could get anything. We had little wild strawberries. We paid like $50 for a kilo, and there was one purveyor who did that. And every
Wow.
2-3-star restaurant went
$50
there.
a kilo. That's still $25 a pound, right?
Yeah,
Something like
it
that.
was very expensive. It was like $35 per person
Wow.
for a little dessert
Wow.
at that point.
So I asked this question a lot, and I had a winemaker in from Paso a few weeks ago. This guy's like, I mean, you want biodynamic organic. This guy, like, they don't touch anything, right? And the vineyard was never ever under conventional farming, so it's from scratch. It's been biodynamic. And I asked him this question, and I get different answers. I have 2 questions I ask people. One is, if you went to the market in Nice and you picked out an organic tomato, a homegrown tomato, and a homegrown flowers, or the edible flower, whatever you're going to put in your meal, and you went down the street to the conventional market that was grown conventionally, and you bought exactly the same ingredients, and you cooked them the same way, same temperature, same presentation, same timing. Is it different?
Very different.
Like just fresher, just health. You feel better.
You feel better. It's fresher. The taste is there. The flavor is there. It's the same thing. You go to Pasadena on Thursday to the farmer's market.
Yes.
You pick up a carrot there, and you go to Vaughn's, pick up a carrot.
But see, I have this thing. Dan Barber talks about in his book, The Third Plate. He talks about like they're trying to get like 13 bricks out of a carrot or some crazy number that makes the thing almost like sugar, right? And they're doing this biodynamically, trying to figure this out. But I've been to Whole Foods how many times and grabbed some of their carrots, and they're so bitter I can't eat them. leading me to the concept that just because it is organic doesn't make it taste better. It's the farmer still has a responsibility to farm so the food tastes good, right?
No, definitely, definitely.
At some point.
But it's the same thing, what I said before. There's a big difference between the farmers market and Vaughn's.
Vaughn's.
And the other thing, when I arrived, I went to the market every day, picked up my sculpins, picked up the sardines they threw away because they didn't know what to do with it, zucchini flour that was thrown away. So all those things,
Wow.
all what I learned in south of France, I basically brought here. At that point, we had like eggplants like baseballs, basically.
What were the American restaurants back
like
then?
footballs. Sorry.
Yeah, football, the big ones.
Yeah.
What were the restaurants that were not French in LA at the time? That, let's say, a steakhouse. I mean, the Ruth's Chris weren't around. I know there's the Mortons. They weren't around yet. But were there steakhouses that were popular? Do you remember?
In that time, well, there was Chasen, but
Chasen's was chili.
Was chili more. There was.
But that was a steakhouse. Yeah.
All the Bristol, the
Brown Derby.
Brown Derby. They most likely had steak on, but that was 20 years early. That was in the 60s.
Yeah,
most
that's
likely.
true. Because the question I had, and I had this conversation up in the fancy food show in New York, same thing. If you took a piece of meat from the 40s from a reputable farmer,
Yeah.
with a reputable farm, the FDA was around, but there was restrictions, no hormones, whatever they do to beef now to make it.
Yeah.
Does that steak taste better if you could put it side by side with today's steak? Which I don't care for any of those steakhouses.
Yeah.
I can't eat them, but
Why not?
they put butter in it, and the meat doesn't taste that
So
great.
which steakhouse do you like?
Well, I will say, yesterday I had a steak at Mi Piace, and it was really, really good.
Oh, okay.
It was a ribeye. He said he just changed purveyors, 21-day age, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Where do you like the steak around here?
Well, I like to eat it at Nick and Staff because we own Nick and Staff, and Nick and Staff it was named after my sons, Nicola and Stefan.
Oh, really?
And we have
Where's that?
It's downtown Los Angeles.
Okay, what to go?
We have our own aging room. We age it 28 days, and we buy prime and we buy certified Angus, and we buy from Newport Meat, which is one of the top
Purveyors.
meat purveyors.
Yeah, okay, we'll have to try that.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
when I go to these, like,
I will take you. We'll go
thank
together.
you. I can't eat Fleming's. I can't eat Ruth's Chris. I don't just.
But
just-
that's the
commercial.
The quality of the food of the meat is not very good.
So if I jump, would I be jumping forward if after the Regency Club is when Patina started? Or there's something in between.
After the Regency Club, I consulted a little bit. In 1989, I found this little restaurant. I made a couple of offers to restaurants around town, and I found Le Saint-Germain, which was in the heydays a very romantic restaurant. It was owned by a Belgian gentleman, and I bought it in 1989, and I raised the money from 38 people in a limited partnership, $650,000.
Wow, that's a lot back then.
And we renovated the place, put everything in the front, nothing in the back. I was married at that time with Christine, and we opened up, and it became very successful and extremely successful.
89. That's not like recent history. That's like not that long ago, really.
That's 30
30
years
years.
ago.
I know,
Yeah.
but
30 years.
That's
This year is our 30th anniversary.
doesn't seem that old.
It's terrible. But anyway, so we opened it up, great success, and I paid the investors back in 15 months,
Really?
110% of the money.
Wow. That's pretty unheard of in this
Yeah.
business.
And I wanted to pay them back very quickly because at that point there was a split. I had a 50-50 split
Yeah.
of the profit.
You want- So that was Saint Germain. So then, was that rebranded as Patina? Or did you?
Yeah, that was renovated, rebranded, and after that, after 1989, in 90 we started our catering company. I took over the small space at Mocha downtown. There was a place called La Serre, which was in the valley. A guy also worked at the Saint Germain. He basically closed down. I bought that. I did another deal, another partnership, and then I opened a couple of places on my own. We did Cafe Pinot downtown,
I
Pinot
remember that.
Hollywood,
Sure.
Pinot Provence in Orange County, Pinot Blanc in Napa, and in 1997, I had trouble with one of the investors. He really became very angry. He had a certain share in the corporation, and he always sent me letters from lawyers and accountants. So I said I have to do something about that, and I bought him out at that point. And I said I really don't want to do this all my life, because you had 180 partners. At any day, people could complain that I'm not enough in this restaurant. I favor this restaurant. This restaurant is my partnership is losing money. What do you do for me?
That's a good point.
So I built about 6 years ago. I built an independent board with a Goldman Sachs guy, top tax layer from Melvin and Meyer, an independently rich guy, real estate guy. So they were all investors, and twice a year we got together, and I basically said what I want to do over the next 3 years. And they gave me a lot of advice, because they have been in the business. They were all in the 50s, 60s, and I was a young guy. And at the end, I did anyway what I wanted. But we talked through a lot of different issues, how to approach it, and all of it. And that helped me really at the end, when I said in 1997, I have to wrap this up all in one company. Otherwise, I have too many problems.
That's a very insightful thing to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do because you're actually sort of maybe divvying up some of the responsibility, or maybe losing a little control by having.
No, I didn't.
You didn't do that?
No.
Well, because you're a German guy, and we don't do that. So how do the things like Lincoln in New York become a Patina restaurant? Did you just
Let me just
finish that,
I
yeah.
give you. So in '97, we basically hired a small merger and acquisition group called what is it called? The Century City. Oh God. Okay, we hired the
yeah, you did
group.
an M&A group.
Hula and Loki was called. Hula and Loki merger acquisition, and basically we decided we want to. They should help us, get everything in line for a sale, because at that point I had $4 or $5 million in debt. I was a little bit.
And how many restaurants at that?
We had about 8, and so they recommended that we roll it into one group. So they did a roadshow, went all over, talked to the investor. We got 99.7 approval rate. I had like 86%, and the investors kept 13. So
That's pretty good.
yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and then they went out and marketed us, and we had a couple of groups were interested in us, and we had another roadshow with them. And then at the end, I chose Restaurant Associate, and Restaurant Associate offered 22 million in the beginning, and then it went up to 40 million. Then I sold, and that was at the end of '99.
Wow.
Then after that,
She's 20 years ago.
after that, basically what happened is that we were with Compass Group. Restaurant Associate in New York was owned by Compass Group. Compass Group is out of England, the largest food service company in the world, 21 billion. And Restaurant Associates was 800 million. And the guy who ran Restaurant Associates, his name was Nick Valenti. Nick Valenti basically was my boss. He let me run the West Coast. And in 5 years, we became tired of Compass, because they're just a big elephant, and we couldn't move left, right, and
It's hard. That's hard, right?
they want to change a lot of things we didn't like to change. So we went in and bought the company back on Monday and sold it back to the Japanese.
You told me that, and when we had coffee, and I thought, wow, that's brilliant.
We sold it to the Japanese for 30% of equity, and it was a Tokyo-based food service company of $2.5 billion. They let us run from 2006 to 2014 their business, and it was great because we went there 3 times a year. We presented the numbers, what's happening in the restaurant business, what's happening politically in the United States, how many lawsuits, how much money we need, etc. And we hit every single year our target. So in 2014, we made a deal with the company Delaware North Company. And Delaware North Company, they run, it's a $4 billion American company. They run 50 stadiums, they run airports,
Wow.
they have gambling, they have most of the national parks, they have resorts in Australia and New Zealand, they have Wembley Stadium in London, they are worldwide, and they basically bought us because we had a lot of performing arts centers and
Yeah, you had a lot of
museums.
those places like Mocha and those things.
Yeah, museums.
Yeah.
So since then, we owned by them, and we were running it for 5 years, and now we become consultants to that company.
Well, after you told me the story about the Japanese, I thought, okay, how did you know that the next day that they wanted the business, or they had inquired?
No.
You had sort of talked about it before?
We talked to the Japanese first that they're going to buy it at a certain price.
Yeah.
So then we went back to the English and says we have an offer for 100 million. We want to pay you. They were delighted. They want to get out because we were too much a pain in the butt.
Yeah, right. By design. Right?
By design. And
That's
and
amazing.
So it just happened. It was good.
Yeah, I don't think, it so happens, a lot of people say luck. I don't think luck. Luck is preparation meets opportunity. You're in the right place. You have the right asset.
Yeah.
You use your head on certain things, and you leverage the position that the company was in. It's a pretty amazing story, really.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the Patina Group. So,
And through all those acquisitions, because in 2000, when I became part of Restaurant Associates, in 2005, when we sold to the Japanese, Restaurant Associate had a whole bunch of restaurants like Rockefeller Center, like MetLife Building and all of that.
Yes.
And they get folded into the Patina Group
I see.
because the English kept the Restaurant Associates name. So we became then a $200 million company, and today we're
how many
about
restaurants?
375 million.
Wow. And how many restaurants?
About 80.
Wow. And so that's amazing, right? You go from, hey, I was in some debt, I had a couple of restaurants going on, I didn't know what I was doing, to $375 million in gross sales and 80 restaurants. That's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So you mentioned last time, well, I want to ask a couple of cooking questions, and then we'll get into the wine part. If somebody came, one of your sons came, they didn't know you. Mm-hmm. They heard about this famous chef, and they want some advice. They just graduated from college, or they just graduated from high school, and they're asking whether they should go to culinary school to get started, or just bootstrap it, get in the kitchen and start working.
So both of them did that too.
Oh, they did that anyway.
They wanted to know.
I just made it up. I don't know.
So I gave them the reality. I said, listen, go to college, graduate, and then you can do whatever you want.
Okay, good.
So, and they both did, and they're not in the restaurant business. Stefan maybe will go a little bit in the wine business. He's interested in that. He went to Spotswood for the summer.
Oh, wow, that's
and
good.
last year he had a tour of 6 regions with UC Davis for 8 weeks in Europe. So,
Wow, that's really cool.
So he's interested in a little bit, and the other guy is in the finance world. So
that's, well, you know what? Look, I have had a lot of winemakers in here who are attorneys. The owner of Chateau Talbot.
Yeah.
The guy was an attorney for 30 years.
Yeah.
The women that
and they're sick and tired of it.
Yeah, and they go to the wine business.
And they want to go in the wine business
So-
and lose all their money they made before.
Exactly. I know you picked 2 winners, didn't you?
Yeah.
You did very well around
No, I mean
restaurants.
the losing business.
The wine
It's all
business is
liquid,
tough.
right?
Yeah, it's liquid assets. Look at this. It's beautiful stuff, by the way. It's
Yeah.
really good wine, but it's a really hard business, and my side of it's very, very complicated right now. I'm really I'm excited about the opportunities to do things like we're doing today, as well as rebrand my company because this industry is so laden with junk. There's so much crap in the industry.
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
You know, Groupon, $45 for 15 wines. Oh, and you get a free corkscrew too. A big deal, right?
Oh, wow.
But what is that stuff going to be?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
paying. I know this for a fact. They're paying less than €1 a bottle for this
Yeah, yeah.
stuff, and bottling on all these brands.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you decided after your this career in the food business that you're going to go to Provence. So the first question was, why didn't you go back to the Rhine and the Mosel and the German wine districts where you're from? And then what was it about Provence that just allured you to there? Because I guess you worked there all those years. So
Well, I mean, I was never into German wine and I never
that
worked
time.
in Germany. So, and I worked in France in that region for a long
sure,
time
Nice.
at the Côte d'Azur, but I knew the Var quite well, and I still have a lot of friends there, and I like the people there. I like their accent. I like the climate. I like everything about it because it's a incredible. You have incredible. No, I should start again. A lot of people go to Provence for one thing. They like rosé.
Yes.
They like the sea. They like the climate. And I'm in my 60s, and so I said maybe that's how I should retire because on the last sales I made a little bit of money, so I needed to invest it.
Sure.
And then I made a deal in a day. I
Just went down there.
my broker my broker called me up. He said, "There's something you should look at. It's 170 hectares, so it's about 400 acres.
Yeah, it's pretty good size.
And they have been selling. They tried to sell for years. There were two different. It was a brother and a sister. They inherited the place. One inherited the chateau. The other inherited all the land and a couple of other buildings. So I went there. I talked to the woman. I said, "Look, I'm going to come back tomorrow with an offer. I only make one offer, and I want to close the deal in 6 months." So I came, and she said yes. And then in March 15th, 2015, we closed the deal.
Congratulations. That's really what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring to the extent I tried. I bought 60 acres in Paso, and I told my wife we're going to go up there and we'll just slowly nurture the grapes and whatever we'll plant, and then we'll build a house and we'll retire.
Yeah.
And I got tired and I sold it and bought a beach house. I'm at the beach.
You're much better off at the beach, believe me.
We spend time in Hermosa Beach, but you mentioned something that's kind of interesting. The accent, the southern France accents is different than the Parisian accent.
Yeah.
And the Tours accent. And yesterday I had 3 French vendors come in. Tuesday's tasting day.
Yeah.
I had a young man from the Provence who sells Bordeaux, by the way. That's as a living. Yeah. He's taking me to Bordeaux in August for a trip, Petrus, the whole thing. But he started this program inside this Bordeaux house called Duclos to bring in Provence wine because that's where he grew up. And he has this great passion for rosé.
Yeah.
Do you find the Americans have a passion for rosé? Do they understand it? Because the West Coast is a tough animal for rosé.
Well, so 5 years ago, when I saw 5 years early in 2008, 2009, that rosé is growing by 30-40%.
Was growing for sure.
And I saw there's a huge opportunity there, and that's why I really was drawn towards going into the rosé business. It's not that complex. You sell it within a year or two. You don't have a large inventory you have to keep. Nowadays, 5 years later, about a couple of weeks ago, Bernard Arnault just bought La Galoupe for 38 million.
Wow.
And I went to the Formula One race in France, and I met Mr. Ott, O-T-T.
Yeah, the famous rosé.
Famous rosé. And they all talked about how this will change the landscape in France, even from a rosé business. Yesterday, I heard that Chanel is looking for a vineyard.
Really? Wow.
All those fashion houses it's now fashionable to buy a vineyard, and their new clientele, the hipsters, so to speak.
That's true.
That's what they drink, right?
That's true. So anyway, you got to touch something. Were you at Monaco last year or this year?
No, it was in Castellet.
Oh, in Castellet. 'Cause we went to Monaco not this last race, the race before.
Yeah.
Which is really a lot of fun.
It's incredible.
So, because we talked about how much we bought and sold here, which was more than anything I've ever bought and sold in the rosé world ever, the Wine of the Month Club, particularly in this price range. Yesterday, I had a vendor come in with a rosé. It was 2016. I said, "What?" I go, "Why do you have 2016?" Because they're trying to move 17s still, you know, but their 18s and 19s are out from South America, so you know it's kind of you need to be more contemporary. He said, "Well, will you buy it? Will you take it for $3?" I go, "No, because it still tastes the same, even at $3. It tastes the same, right?"
It's like,
So I said, "Let me give you some advice. I'm always free with advice." I said, "Why don't you take it to the 99-cent store and just get rid of it?" He goes, "Well, will you buy it all for 99 cents?" I go, "No, I don't want it for 99 cents either. It's no good." But
it gives you a bad reputation.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I still have a hard time in the West Coast anyway, and maybe it's my clientele because I have a different level of people what they're willing to pay for wine.
Yeah.
And I know that the East Coast is very big on imports. Generally, does really well with rosé.
Yeah.
But you brought in I forgot how much, half a container full into the wine warehouse?
We sold last year 4,000 cases.
Wow.
At Wine Warehouse.
At Wine Warehouse?
Yeah.
That's great. I'm really proud to see that.
We're a startup. We're in the third year. So,
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then you brought me this gorgeous bottle, which now I'm going to tell you something from the shipping guy, the guy that ships wine every day. This is like a substantial bottle here. This has got to be 6 pounds or something.
It's going to be more expensive.
But I was fascinated by a couple things. Okay, I'm going to share something with you. I applied last week and took the test, the entrance exam to become a master of wine.
Oh, okay.
And it's a very academic degree, as you know, and it's very hard. The question I was able to answer, the question that you got 3 questions, an hour and a half, one of them. You only have to choose one, and this is only if they want to decide to let you be part of the organization, right? Okay. Fortunately, one of the questions was the direction of wine packaging, and I've dealt with this all my life. My uncle and I were going to start a synthetic cork company because I had access to a technology. So I'm fascinated by this. And when you brought this in, I was impressed with this label. I've never seen anything like it. It's wrapped. You've got a wax seal. And then underneath it, what happens when you peel this off?
The moment you peel it off, you see there's there's basically the entire land where we grow the grapes at Cala. And they in red ink identifies the parcel we use, Syrah, Grenache, Carignan. And then there's a little story that's signed by me and my 2 boys about the red wine.
Well, and so what vintage of the red is this?
It is 2016, and this was produced by, what I didn't mention, I have 2 consultants. One consultant is Stéphane Deroncourt, who is one of the famous consultants from Bordeaux. He consulted since I bought the vineyard. His team comes every 8 weeks and talks to my people and tells them exactly what to do. And then I have a guy who lives right next door. He's the consultant for the rosé business. His name is Bruno Trignanelli. And
a very French guy.
Very mafioso Italian guy.
Sicily,
yeah. And I'm very proud that I did this because Deroncourt does things different than a lot of other people, and the result from the first vintage is absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
and the packaging development is basically, I took that on because I wanted to make wine is often a gift. And basically, when you get that bottle like this, it looks like a gift already.
It's true. It's
you
wrapped like a gift.
You can pull off the envelope. Let me show you.
Just like this?
Yeah. So the real label is this little label here. And then inside, you have all the information. and it's packaged in a silk paper on top. And
So-
we have single bottle Magnum and double Magnums.
This is based on the blend. Great for tomorrow's barbecue, no?
Oh, perfect.
Syrah, Grenache.
Yeah.
And what number of vintage is this for the red? Did you? Is the second
For
time?
no, this is
The
the
first
first
one.
vintage.
So I know the area where you're in Saint Tropez, near Saint Tropez on the way in, and I'm trying to picture the red grape business down there. I mean, it's all really rosé is the thing, right?
Listen, rosé is the thing, but they produce quite a little bit of red over the years, but they have no reputation internationally or nationally. And now, over the last 10 years, there are a lot of young winemakers coming in and making the red wine better and better. And my belief is the reason why I wanted to have red wine is the hipsters who drink your rosé today, they're going to drink your rosé tomorrow.
That's true.
And you will taste it tomorrow, and you will say it's very well made.
So Gerard Bertrand makes a ton of wine. I don't think he's that close to the.
He's in
Côte d'Azur,
Languedoc.
but
He's
more in the
about
Languedoc, right?
250 miles from,
he's
or
way
250
south, but
kilometers.
he doesn't come up the
from-
Côte d'Azur
No, no.
because he makes a lot of reds.
Yeah, I
and a lot
know.
of,
He's all
Patina.
over the map.
So, farming techniques for Domaine de Cala is the vineyard's been there for how long? Because I think you bought it from somebody. Was this
The
just
vineyard has been there for 60 years, or maybe more.
wow?
It was owned by a family called Barbier, and they sold their wine for 60 years in bulk. The name before was called Domaine de Cala. Purac is a small little flower in the Provence, but nobody could spell it in America anyway, and
Yeah.
that's why we changed to Cala. And Cala, in a sense, so you have Cala di Volpe, a little creek somewhere, but Cala is California, LA.
Oh,
Very simple,
very
right?
clever, but I like it. Domaine de Cala.
Yeah.
And so, farming techniques. Are we looking at sustainable, organic, biodynamic, or trying to do
we're
that,
not
or-
there yet.
Yeah,
We're
you're working
just
on it.
applying this fall.
Do you think
And-
that's important?
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants. They want natural wine. They want organic wine. I mean,
Well-
and we're just applying in the fall, so it will take 3 years to get
I
it.
just wrote an article on LinkedIn about natural wine, which doesn't exist. The word doesn't exist. I mean, we call it natural. Everybody uses the term, but I get a lot of consternation from winemakers saying we don't even know what it means because. And I sort of determined with another winemaker, Molly Hill from Sequoia Grove, that it means sort of as untouched as possible,
Yeah, yeah.
right? The feds don't even have they don't know the federal government does not have
A definition.
a definition of natural food.
Oh,
It doesn't exist. Natural flavorings exist. Natural
yeah.
food. But, we're talking about food and the tomatoes that you might buy from the farmer's market in Nice. Well, does not apply to grapes. Wouldn't it be better from a character standpoint? It doesn't mean the wine has to taste better, but from a character standpoint, from a grape, the wholesomeness of the grape, wouldn't it be better if it's organic?
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, yes.
Yeah.
But I now in the region, I mean, you have a couple of different appellations. You have Côte Provence, Côte de Belley. You have Côte d'Arrois, and in Côte d'Arrois we have 72 vineyards, and 50% of those they're all already all organic.
Really? Okay. So
Yeah.
it's definitely moving that direction.
Everybody is moving in this direction.
And it can be done. I think it can be done. I think that I've had the opportunity to taste a wine that was grown across the street, organically, in the same vineyard, same winemaker, same barrel, same everything. On the other side of the street, it was not. It was conventional, and there was a difference. You can taste the difference.
Oh, yeah?
It's not. I wouldn't say one was better than the other, but there was a brightness about the organic wine. I think biodynamic wines as well. They're brighter. They have a different ethereal character about them.
But then the consumer, what they look for this little sticker.
Little sticker.
The moment it has the sticker, that's it.
It's different.
Right?
So we started the Pure Wine Club here at the Wine Club 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah?
And it's only organic and only biodynamic, and there are companies that do this exclusively. Other clubs like mine, that's all they feature. But you'd be surprised at how much really is made with organic grapes or even biodynamic that it's not, that they don't even bring up when they come to it. So I have to ask these vendors now, is this organic? Yeah, it is. I'm like, why don't you tell me that?
Yeah,
Because people are looking for this kind of stuff.
No, they definitely look for this.
Well, we could talk for a long time, Joachim, and I really appreciate you coming in. Maybe we'll do it again. I certainly would love to head down to downtown. And one last question. Pinot at the Chronicle.
Yeah.
Was that after the Chronicle was the Chronicle, right?
Yeah.
And then it became Pinot at the Chronicle.
It was Pinot Chronicle. At that point, we had 6 Pinots. They were all bistros.
Yes.
They had all antique look. We picked all the stuff, the interior stuff up in France. We shipped it over here.
I remember.
And it was successful in the beginning and then lost money. And I closed it down because it gave me another $2 million in cash.
There's always a reason for everything, isn't there?
Yeah. The moment the multiple is right, that's
Yes,
the most important thing.
Well, it's a great pleasure having you here, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I know that the people that listen to this podcast will love it too, and I hope we can do it again.
Thank you very much,
Thanks
Paul.
for the wine.
Pleasure being here. And enjoy the red for the 4th of July.
It's going to be great.
And hopefully a couple of bottles of Jose.
I think I'm going to produce this podcast and take it on my phone and make people listen to it while they're tasting the wine. Not make them. They'll enjoy listening to it while they're tasting the wine.
Good.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.